Welcome, everyone. We are so glad to have you join us today for a special workshop we're doing with Chef Paul DelleRose. Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
But before we kind of get started and all the fun stuff he has planned today of sharing a recipe and his health journey, really, just want to do a couple technical things. So find the chat, say hello, tell us where you're joining us from. Now, this is technology, so we know that it can have issues sometimes. So if we pop off, give us a second, let us pop back on. If you have issues connecting, one of the best things you can do is refresh your screen. The other thing we found is that the browser, the Chrome browser works really well with our service that we use. So if you do have issues in seeing or hearing us, refresh your screen. You might try a different browser. Or even if your connection's kind of slow, you might even try a different connection as well. So let's see, I'm gonna make sure we got in the chat lots of people from all over South Carolina, North Carolina, California, Florida, Ohio, aloha from the Big Island. Isn't that fun? So thank you all for joining us. So Paul, before you get started, I do want to read your bio. Now, I met Paul at the Healthy Kitchen, Healthy Lives conference. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that from his bio, but this is one of the reasons I reached out to him is because I have all my notes from the conference, is he said, I make simple foods delicious all the time. And I was like, we need to have some Paul in our lives here with Full Plate Living. So let me share a little bit about his bio, because it's pretty impressive. And you're just going to love this workshop today. So he is a professor of culinary arts at the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. He teaches non-commercial food service and high volume production and the college degree programs. He is instrumental in designing the course, which operates The Line, he says, a teaching kitchen at the CIA student dining venue known as The Egg. Through lectures, hands-on practice, Paul's students learn the skills necessary for a successful non-commercial high volume food service operation. Paul also helped develop the curriculum and taught the 2 cohorts of the joint pilot study with the Culinary Institute of America and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. The study involved a multi-dimensional approach to training consumers to eat better through healthy cooking techniques and lifestyle modifications, and is a regular presenter at the Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives conference. So you can see right there why we needed Paul in our lives. He graduated in '94 from the Culinary Institute of America and returned to his alma mater as a facility member and a faculty member in 2007. So before that, he was a consulting executive chef for Cornerstone USA. His professional experience also includes serving as executive chef for the DoubleTree Hotel and Hilton in Tarrytown, New York, and executive chef and partner at Savides, is that correct? Savides Venice restaurant on the Hudson, among various positions at restaurants and hotels in New York. He's a certified hospitality educator and holds a bachelor's degree in education from Empire State College of the State University of New York. And he's also studied at the Windows on the World Wine School. So as I said, very impressive. And you can see exactly why we wanted him here today. So as I'm going to hand it over to you, Paul, everyone, if you have questions please use the chat feature for that. I'll jump in, interrupt them with any questions that you have. We will also have a time at the end for question and answer too. So again, Paul, we are so happy to have you with us today, and I'll hand it off to you.
Well, thank you, Amy. You seem to know a little bit more about me than I know about myself. But it's a pleasure for me to be here, honestly. And we're talking about a couple of my favorite things. We're talking about health and wellness and food, and most importantly, we're talking about me. So, and I'm joking with that, but I want to share this recipe with you guys. This is it's a cream of, if you could see that, cauliflower sort of soup base recipe, and it's very high in fiber and very versatile. So it's going to start off sort of as a soup, and then I'm going to transfer that into some other recipes as you'll see. So I'll go through the PowerPoint, and there's the finished product. I'll start with the finished product, and it's just a soup, the cauliflower soup, garnished with some oil, basil oil, and some crispy chickpeas and some fennel fronds. So that's what it'll look like when you're done, but certainly tastes delicious too. So this is what you're going to need. It's just simple easy to find ingredients that are high in fiber, right? So it's some garlic and an onion and a head of cauliflower or so, a pound of cannellini beans. That's a variable. You can use any sort of white bean, navy bean, a lima bean, pinto bean, so any sort of dry legume, and some water. Okay, and I'll talk about the water in a little bit because that is the variable in the picture here. So I'll talk more about that in a second. So to start, real simple, you're just going to take the beans and preferably soak them overnight. If you don't have that sort of time or you neglect to do so, it's not the end of the world. You can do what we call a quick soak on them, where you put the beans in some water, bring them up to a simmer, shut it off, and just let it sit or soak for an hour. And that's a way of expediting that soaking process. You're going to roughly chop the garlic and the onions, the cauliflower as well. And don't spend a lot of time chopping this fine. It's going to be pureed at the end. So just coarsely is plenty. Then I'm going to find an appropriate sized pot, something that could hold, upwards of 1.5 gallons or so for this particular recipe. You can also scale it and cut it in half. So appropriate sized pot, little bit of oil, and you're just going to what we call sweat those onions and garlic and cook them till they're translucent. They've softened a bit. They're starting to show some transparency. The flavors are starting to develop. Right about that point, you're good to go, and that's cooked enough. Okay. Next step is you're going to add the water, and you could substitute water for vegetable stock, but I add other things to this, and I kind of keep it generic. So I like to just add water. I don't even add any salt or any seasonings at this point. And if you wanted to, you could add perhaps a bay leaf or some fresh thyme or something along those lines, but not essential at this point. So I add the water and I cook the beans till they're about 90% of the way done. And the best way to do that is, or determine if they're 90% of the way done, is just give it a taste. So stick a bean or two in your mouth. If it's relatively tender but not quite there, you're at about 90%. And I mentioned something about the water earlier. If water being the variable, if your pan or your pot is boiling rapidly, you're going to evaporate that water quicker than your beans are going to absorb it and cook. So you may need to constantly add a little bit of water to that. And you'll know because the beans are just sort of floating or the water's not covering the beans, quite honestly. And you want them to be fully covered at all times, as you can see with the picture on the right. So a gentle simmer is where you need to be to cook this soup. You don't want to boil it rapidly. So let that go. It's going to take roughly 40 minutes or so, depending on how long or whether or not you soaked your beans. But don't rush that point, And then when your beans are just about there, like we said, about 90%, you're going to go ahead and add that cauliflower and just dump it right in the pot. It's nothing fancy. And just cook it till it falls apart and it's completely tender. Don't stress. There's no worries. You can't overcook it. We're going to puree it anyway. So just cook it. I was going to say something, but chose not to. And then you're going to puree this whole soup and puree it till it's super smooth. Now, here in this picture, I used a hand blender. You can certainly use a hand blender. You can use a regular home blender. It works fine as well. I would not use a food processor. You're not going to get that smoothness that you want out of a blender. And if your blender doesn't have the capacity to hold all that full amount of soup, then do it in batches. But it's imperative that you let it go for a long enough time so that it's smooth. And all that starch in the beans is going to come out. It's going to mix with the water and the onions, the garlic. It's going to be really flavorful, but more importantly, I shouldn't say, or equally as important, it's going to be creamy. And that's what we're looking for. And that's why the starch is key. Welcome back.
Hey, we have a question for you. And I've never changed my cooking for altitude. I've never really had to. But have you? Do you know how much time you would add for a high altitude cooking? Are you familiar with
I
that?
know
Have you had that
water
experience?
boils at a different temperature and higher altitude, but I honestly, I don't want to give you the wrong information, so I'm not exactly sure. So I'm a little reluctant to answer that. Maybe, yeah,
No, understand. Google's
yeah,
great
I was
though,
going to
right?
suggest Google. I was going to suggest Google.
All right,
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah,
Great
for
question.
sure.
Thanks for asking that one.
So
No.
just go ahead and puree this until it's smooth, like I mentioned. Season it and go ahead and season it with some salt or pepper or anything that you prefer as an appropriate seasoning. Garnish it again, as I mentioned. I like a little bit of contrast and texture. So the soup is very creamy. Um, so something with a little bit of texture will add crunch. So uh, roasted chickpeas, some sort of seed will work really good. Hemp hearts are nice. They'll add a little bit of texture. Um, Tortilla strips, anything that nature. Cheese, even just a little bit of cheese. I use some fennel fronds here for a bit of color, plus for a little bit of a flavor pop. That's what I chose. I also drizzled it with some oil. Um, and that's the finished product. So that's the soup as I presented it. Just the base sort of cream of cauliflower soup that is rich in fiber. So the beautiful thing about this soup is that we can take it, again, use it as a base and convert it into other things. And especially important in today's day and age when everyone's super busy with life and families and children and things that are going outside on around us. We don't have lots of time to spend in the kitchen. This is something that you could make on a Sunday meal prep, or prep it over and just reinvent it throughout the week. And it also honestly freezes fairly well. It looks a little funky when you take it out, but when you put it back in the pot and rethermalize it and heat it up, actually, it's fine. So I'm going to show you a couple of different things that I created out of the same recipe. So I added broccoli to it. So I took the soup base. I just took some broccoli stems, broccoli florets. I cooked it again in that same soup. I pureed it, and then I turned it into cream of broccoli soup. I garnished it with some boiled broccoli florets. I put a little bit of cheddar cheese on it. You could omit the cheese if you prefer. Again, I'm rocking the crispy chickpeas because I'm a fiend for them. I actually have a bag right next to me of them, but I'm not going to eat them, so you don't see my mouth. It's bad enough you have to see my nostrils. You don't need to see my mouth as well. So that's that. It works well with spinach. You could do cream of spinach. You can do cream of mushroom. But any sort of vegetable could be added to it. And honestly, that's a satisfying meal, at least for me and my wife. Maybe not so much for my children, but it works for us. So that's another soup so that you can create out of that. Also turned it into a gratin, or broccoli gratin. Works well with cauliflower gratin, where I just took, again, some boiled broccoli. I'm sorry. I put it into a cast iron pan. You can use a Pyrex baking dish. That would work really well also. I just poured a little bit of that cream sauce or soup base right over the top of it. You could add as little or as much as you like. I covered it with cheese, and I baked it in the oven until the whole thing was just ooey gooey, brown and bubbly. So that's certainly an option. And by the way, the soup base as it is completely vegetarian and quite honestly vegan. So you could omit the cheese from any of these and convert it into a vegan option as well if you are vegan. And this particular dish, the mac and cheese, I did the same thing. You could easily make this vegan. So again, I just started with the cream soup base, the cauliflower white bean base. I added some cooked elbow pasta. I added some spices. I like to put a little cayenne, cumin, and coriander, sort of give it that southwestern flavor profile to this one. I added a bunch of cheddar cheese on the top of it, and I baked it again in that cast iron sort of oval baking dish, but a Pyrex or anything of that nature will work at home. So I converted it. And by the way, I used white pasta here. You could easily use whole grain pasta or gluten-free pasta. You could omit the cheese, add nutritional yeast, and keep it vegan if that sort of thing applies to you or appeals to you. But again, super versatile. What else do we have? Oh, this was a fun one. This was really, really good. This was, again, a pasta dish with wild mushroom cream sauce. So I just took that cream sauce base that we made. I thinned it out with a little bit of water, and then I added some grated Parmesan cheese to it. Got a bunch of mushrooms, whatever I can find in the fridge, white mushrooms, a cremini, portobello, anything, oyster, anything. I just sauteed them in a little bit in a pan with some olive oil and a little bit of garlic and some shallots and the mushrooms. I added that cream sauce base, a little bit of Parmesan cheese. I added some pasta. Again, this was white pasta because that's what I had. You can use whole wheat or whole grain pasta. Again, gluten-free pasta doesn't really matter. But that's a super satisfying dish, vegetarian. Again, omit the cheese and it's vegan. So, and this is how my mind works. When I teach, I try to do dishes that will lend themselves well to different groups of folks that have some restrictions, dietary restrictions. So, easily converted to vegan or vegetarianism. So that's that. This was a fun one. Okay, this one required a little bit more work or for planning in advance. We turned our mix into a hummus. So what I did here was I took the chickpeas, I'm sorry, not chickpeas, that's in a traditional hummus, the white bean cauliflower base that I made, and I removed some of it from the liquid prior to pureeing it. So I kept it a bit viscous, and I added a little bit of that liquid back to it just to get it to the right sort of hummus-like consistency. And then I seasoned it up with some cayenne, again, some cumin, and a little za'atar spice. I put a little tahini paste in there. It was a lot of fun to do. And then I treat it as if it were hummus, but it's nothing more than white beans with the cauliflower. I drizzled a little bit of olive oil. I'm a fiend for everything bagel, so I put a little bit of everything bagel seasoning on the hummus, served it with some pita bread, put it on a piece of toast, a little bit of avocado slices, cherry tomato, and again, that crispy chickpea. I turned it into an avocado toast. If you have an issue with gluten, you could remove the toast and put it on top of a slab of baked potato, or sweet potatoes, even better. That's been roasted in the oven. That sort of thing works well. So, there's tons and tons of uses for this stuff. And it's super versatile, it's super tasty, and more importantly, super easy. Prep a bunch of it early in the week, play with it all week, freeze a quart of it or so, and pull it out when you're pressed for time. You could even put a piece of meat in there and or a piece of fish in it and eat it there. You could put some rice on the bottom of it and eat it almost as a whole bunch of veg that you got floating around in your fridge, and turn it into this sort of stew-like dish. There's just so many things you can do with it. So I just have the recipe here, but I know Amy has that available for you guys. And I also have a bunch of variations that you can share or see. So that's that on the recipe. So just going to take this down.
I am going to share that right now, so everyone should be able to click and download that. I don't know about you all, but when I'm sitting here listening to the chef, as passionate as he is about all these, that he's still that, excited about all these flavors, it just really makes me excited too to try this. So love all the different variations of this. So thank you for sharing that. Actually, I have a few questions before you get on to your other
Sure.
one, because I know this story is impressive, but I do want to ask some of the questions that were around the recipe since we're just in that. You did answer it does freeze well. So yes, it does
Yeah.
freeze well was one of
Yeah,
them.
it does look a little funky when you take it out of the freezer because the solids separate from the water, but don't let that just, it's normal. Once you reheat it, it comes back.
Okay. Yeah. Mix it up really good. Let's see. How long does it last in the fridge?
I've had it for easily a week, as long as your fridge is up to temp. There's no issues, none. I've had it for at least a week.
Excellent. I love this question because as a chef, I know the spices and just the flavors you've been talking about this whole time, but because someone has high blood pressure, they try to stay away from salt. Do you have seasonings that you go to instead
I do.
of salt?
I try to minimize the salt. And in my world, in my professional world, as a professional chef, we season as we go. So every step of the way you season. There were some studies that show that you use 40% less salt if you just season towards the end. It's what we refer to as surface salt. So I've trying to get into the habit of doing that. It's a tough habit to break, but I think I'm doing okay with it. But I just put just a pinch of salt, and then I use other things like spices. Like I always go to cayenne, so just a little bit of heat, a little bit of acid. So like lemon juice or lime juice, or you don't really want to taste it. You want to feel more of the effects of the acid. Garlic, onion, especially love granulated onion. That adds that sort of umami. We mentioned nutritional yeast before. If you can find that and sprinkle some of that in there, that's really good. So things like that, just substitute fresh herbs will always work really, really well. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Someone's asking, do you lose any of the fiber benefit when you puree the soup? And if it's there to begin with and you're just pureeing it, it's still there. So you get to retain all the fiber and enjoy beans in a creamy base, and look at all the different ways that you can use it. It's just phenomenal. And okay, last one for this. How do you do your crispy chickpeas?
That's a good one. So, okay. All right. So there's a couple of different ways. So I'll barrel through them. That's a really good question. I guess I should have specified. If I'm starting from a dry chickpea, I'll soak it for 2 days. And on the first, after 24 hours, I'll change the water, and then I'll soak it again with fresh water. And right on the counter is fine. I drain it. I put it in a mixing bowl. I'll spray it, or I'll add just a touch of oil when I spray it with a little pan spray, and then I'll season it with something. And I happen to love, like I said, everything bagel or za'atar spice or just some sort of Cajun seasoning, depending on what I feel like. Toss it right into the oven. Okay, and then I bake it and until it's crispy. Another way of doing it, but probably not the healthiest, is I take canned chickpeas or that I cook myself, either or, dredge them in a little bit of either cornstarch or flour. So just coat them in a little flour, and then I'll pan fry them in a little bit of oil. It'll come out a little bit nicer, but a totally different product. So the most important thing to keep in mind when you do it the latter way is that you cook it long enough to cook the moisture out of it. Otherwise, it's crispy initially, but it doesn't retain that texture. The first way it's crispy and it lasts a long time, and I do them by the pound, and I keep them in my, like I said, in my cabinet, and I keep them by my car when I'm hungry. In my car, I chew on those a little bit, so they're fun to do.
Is there a particular temperature you use?
350 is fairly generic, and that's good. And for time, I don't know. Taste one. Just don't burn your tongue. It's crispy. You don't break a tooth. You're right where you need to be. Yeah.
Well, actually, I lied. There's a couple more questions that have come in. So, what if you don't like white beans?
You stumped me. I guess any bean will work. I guess just the color will be off. So I like the white beans because
you mentioned pinto beans, and that's a little bit different
texture. And as long as the creaminess is there. So if you're okay with the color, fine. And use any bean you want. I just like the white bean because when I'm going to make a green soup out of it, or I've even turned this soup into corn and chowder, a corn chowder, by putting frozen or fresh corn in it. I've put the corn husk in it. I've put a little bit of sausage because my youngest son, he'll like it with sausage. You could put potato or not. That works really. I've turned it into clam chowder. I use it for everything, but yeah. But you could certainly.
I just love that, being able to use fiber foods like that. So that's
so good.
amazing. All right, last one for the section, then
Yep.
we're going to move on. Could you make this cream of chicken with chicken stock in place of some water? And I think you did mention that you could, the water's nice, and that you're changing the flavor when you add another component to it. But absolutely, vegetable chicken.
100%, and it'd be really good too. And then you could turn it. You could turn it into anything from there. You could turn it into a creamy chicken soup, or so many things you could do with it. I honestly, another thing too is I use it for every once in a while. We'll make an enchilada or a burrito, and I'll add lots of spices to it, and cumin and coriander and cilantro, and I'll just pour it right over the top of the burrito and bake them in the oven, and just it's just a good way to sort of sneak in that fiber and vegetable, and it just works. So yeah,
excellent. Well, I will hand it back off to you. Man, I'm going to download the recipe now and print it off before I leave for today. So, all right.
Cool. All right. So this is me. So you may not realize it, but looking at me, but I'm fat. Keep thinking of myself as fat, and maybe some pictures will help you see. So this was me back in July of 2010. My wife had just given birth to our youngest, who was born in October well, she hadn't given birth yet, but he was born in 2010. These pictures were taken earlier in 2010. I think I missed a slide somewhere here. Let me go back to that. Anyway, I feel like I'm missing one, but this was me back in July of 2010. I was not the healthiest. I was nearly 500 pounds, so 466 pounds, with a BMI of 63, plus a whole host of comorbidities. Wasn't doing very hot. I was a little bit of a hot mess. So I was tired all the time. Cholesterol and blood work were all out of whack. I suffered from sleep apnea. Everything that you can imagine that's associated with being overweight. Had a New Year's resolution. I was going to lose weight and wanted to see my children grow and get married and hopefully live a long and healthy life. So I decided to have weight loss surgery. And I had surgery in the first of 2011. In January of 2011, I went under the knife, and I had the gastric lap band. So gastric banding, that was the surgery of choice at the time, 11 years ago. And I had fairly decent success with it. I did really well. I lost a ton of weight. My blood work got a lot better. I had some confidence, and I wasn't on a diet anymore. I was able to eat what I wanted, but only in small amounts, which later we'll get to was sort of a problem. I had so much better quality of life. I always liked my life, and I thought it was great. But once I started to lose weight, I realized on what I was actually missing out on. So a better quality of life. It opened a bunch of doors for me to help me learn and grow. And I got working with the folks at Harvard and on different projects, and just got into nutrition a little bit, and exercise, health and wellness. And just overall, I was just a lot better and a lot happier. So that was that. Then I did really well for a number of years, 5 years. And then I got sick. I had I guess it was the flu. And I was, not to be gross, I was vomiting a bit from the flu. And what happened was my band prolapsed. So it kind of got wrapped around itself, for a lack of a better term, and it was intertwined and basically caused my stomach to knot up, if you will. I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't take a sip of water. If I did, I would vomit. I went to the doctor. They did a test, a scan, and they noticed that it prolapsed. And they said, "Hey, we need to try to revise it. And if it doesn't work, we're going to take it out." It didn't work, so they ended up taking it out. So I was like, "Oof." I immediately kept eating like I had been. So when I had the surgery originally, I could eat a burger, fries, and a milkshake and still lose or maintain my weight loss because of the fact that I was eating just small portions. So as much as the lap band helped me, it was a catalyst to a healthier lifestyle or to weight loss. I was still kind of wasn't making the best choices as I possibly could. So, but mentally, I thought I could eat as much as I wanted to and lose weight, but clearly that was not the case. I gained over 75 pounds in just under a year. And it was a really tough time for me. And I got to the point where I had a heart to heart and said, "Hey, this isn't going to work. I did all this hard work. Definitely don't want to go back to where I was." So I focused in on some diet. And when I mean diet, I don't mean crash fad diet. I meant what I was eating. And portion control. I think that was the biggest issue for me, and still is. I'm a volume eater, and exercise, and I focused in on those things. I continued my involvement with the Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives Conference, Teaching Kitchen Collaborative, and all these other things that allowed me to share my story and practice what I preach and help motivate others, which in turn, in a selfish kind of way, motivated me. Or kept me on target, just as this is doing today. It's helping me keep me on target. So that was 2016, and I was right back on track. I lost all my weight back, and doing really well. So, but through years of abuse and carrying this excess weight around with me, I'd done some severe damage to my knees. Largely arthritis and all sorts of other things going on there, just carrying around that excess weight. But I was experiencing some knee pain a couple of years ago, but I'm an avid, I exercise daily. I go to the gym 7 days a week, or I try to, and usually pretty good at it, at going. So that helped me to keep my knees moving, and physical therapy, if you will, self-physical therapy. So that was really good. And this is me now. So that was me at my heaviest. And that was me just over the summer, a little over 11 years ago. I'm maintaining a roughly around a 250-ish pound weight loss. I'm right around 215, and I fluctuate between 215 and 220. My BMI, according to the charts, I'm still overweight, borderline obese, which I'm okay with, because I'm trying to tell myself it's just a number, and I look at how far I've come, and I look at what I eat, and it doesn't always work because we do get hung up on the number. At least I do. My blood pressure and all my blood work is all in the normal range. I've ditched my sleep apnea machine years ago. My bones feel great. Again, increased quality of life. I'm really, really mindful about what I put in my body, and I'm not going to say I'm perfect. I do have days where when I just sort of go off and eat kind of, things that I shouldn't, typically when I'm drinking a little bit of wine, because, just because. We'll leave it at that. So, and every year when we go to Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives, usually our first stop is right In-N-Out Burger. It's a double animal style with no bun, and that's a once a year treat for me. And no fries, by the way. I said just a burger. So that's that. Take home messages. completely changed eating habits. I was doing a lot of tracking. I'm not so much anymore. Just kind of knowing what I eat, what I put in my body, taking as many steps as I can, parking as far away as I can, taking the steps if I can. Gym 100% 7 days a week, not an option unless there's something going on that will prevent me from going, which happens from time to time. I've tried to get rid of the diet mindset and just sort of focus on the health and wellness and nutrition sort of approach to it all. Trying to eliminate any thought or anything to do with a diet. Weigh myself once a week. I have a smart scale, keeps me on track. It measures my body fat percentage. It measures my basal metabolic rate and all these cool things, including my weight. Stores it on my phone so I could look at trends. And again, I try not to get too hung up on that stuff, but it works for me. And it might not work for everyone, but it certainly works for me. I have no issue with leaning on people for support. I work and have lots of friends that are nutritionists and doctors and people that I've met through exercise physiologists, just people that are there. If I have a question, I could always reach out to, and I have no issue leaning on them for support. And I work in the greatest place on the planet, work at the CIA, the Culinary Institute of America. There's just a wealth of information floating around there, and I can and lean on those folks, and I take advantage of them and the resources that are available to me, and the people that want to help. So I take advantage of that all, and that's my story. I don't know what else to say other than that's it, and that's my journey. So that's that.
Well, now I think everyone knows exactly why I said at the beginning we needed some Paul in our lives to share some food and share his story, because everyone's on a little bit different journey, and kind of what that looks like for you is different than everyone else. And so lots of little nuggets there. So I hope y'all got that. Please, we're going to have a recording of this that you can watch afterwards that we'll be sharing. So look for that. But thank you so much, Paul. There's actually several comments in here. So inspiring. Congratulations, Chef Paul. Also a graduate of Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives, Memories Over Macros. You're a rock star. Congratulations on the success. Do you also walk as well as go to the gym? That's a good question.
Yeah, it's funny. I do cardio once a week. I try not. I do walk. If I walk sometimes with my wife. If we're at the beach or we're here or we're there, we'll go for a walk. But mostly I do resistance training to try to build muscle, and it's more of a sustained caloric burn. And I read about losing muscle mass as you get older. So I'm more focused on that than I am on cardio. But I do walk, and I walk all day at work, mind you. I work in a 30,000 square foot kitchen with 24 students that I'm chasing around for 7 hours a day. So I do get my steps in there.
Excellent. No, great advice. Good question is, how do you manage your cravings?
That's it's a tough one. So I just avoid it. It works for me. I have this addictive personality. One thing I didn't mention in that PowerPoint is when I was at my heaviest, it was also smoking, probably a pack and a half, a pack in a day. So I try. What works for me is avoiding, and I know it doesn't work for everyone. I have because that little bit makes me want to come back and have more and more and more. So I just completely avoid it. There's one day I allow myself the biggest piece of cake and a whole can of Ready Whip. And that's on January 23rd, and that's my birthday. And quite honestly, I eat the whole cake that my wife and kids make, and I eat the whole can almost to the point where I'm going to get sick, and it's just enough to keep me off the cake and whipped cream for a whole nother year. So that's my system, and it works fairly well. So yeah.
No, actually, absolutely. Everyone's kind of has their thing. It's always not necessarily sweet. It's usually the savory type things, chips, sauces, those type of
Yeah,
things.
that's another thing too. I just avoid it, and it
Yeah.
seems to work for me. So
Yeah. All right. Another question. Wow, very inspiring. Would you please share how your meals look like, what they look like now? Is there kind of some staple ones that you keep in your list of meals?
I eat meat at work because I taste what the students are preparing. So I eat a little bit of meat at work, and I'm not vegetarian. I'm not vegan. I don't label myself as anything. But at home, because I eat meat at work, we tend to eat very little of it. And I say we, I mean, my wife and I, my kids will eat chicken every night if I give it to them. And typically do. But we largely vegetarian, lots of squashes, stuffed squashes with just a little bit of cheese and herbs, and we eat fish a couple of nights a week, lots of legumes. We're on a tempeh kick currently. So I like stir fry tempeh. We eat, we eliminate, I shouldn't say eliminate, we eat very, very little carbohydrates. And I know we get a lot of carbohydrates from our vegetables, and we certainly get them from legumes. We eat a fair amount of flaxseed. We sprinkle that on everything. We eat lots of fruits, but we stay away from particularly white. We don't eat any rice, any potato, any pasta, things of that nature. Although we do get carbs from other sources. So that's what a typical dish looks like for us. Just loads and loads of veggies, little bit of meat. So
That's
yeah.
great. Excellent. I mean, veggies are almost like a free-for-all. You can
Yeah.
really eat your weight in them.
And
And you'll be
it's funny,
stuffed.
we have this ongoing thing in our house, and I was raised a little bit different than my wife. My wife, mom would cook basically 4 things or 5 things for everyone, something different. And my house was, hey, you don't have to eat it, but you're not eating it. And I tend to like it because it was forced on me. My dad always had a garden growing up. He used to make things like peas and pasta and zucchini stewed in tomato and things that when I go to my parents' house for my birthday and they say, hey, what do you want? I said, oh man, I'd love some peas and pasta without the pasta now. But still, it's that's just veg forward largely. Yeah.
Yep. Excellent. Let's see. Melissa asks, how much protein in a day? I'm older myself and almost plant-based diet. I'm not sure I'm getting enough protein to sustain muscle mass. I know one of the best things is tracking. I know, Paul, you even mentioned, keeping track of your things. Typically, recommendations are protein 10 to 35% of your caloric intake being from that. So absolutely. And as he said too, as we get older, we definitely need to incorporate some resistance training to keep our lean mass up to, which I know a lot of people go
And
with
the other
protein.
thing with protein that I found is like it's just so confusing, and I've been corrected many times, particularly at Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives, is that when we think of protein, particularly in my world as a chef, we think of center of the plate, and we think of that chicken breast or that steak or pork chop or piece of fish. There's many other sources of protein. I mean, that whole soup that we just made earlier was completely riddled with protein from the legumes. So I mean, protein doesn't have to be, as we know it. And the chickpeas. So there's such great sources of protein available. So, yeah.
And that's really almost kind of the power of tracking sometimes. If you haven't tracked your food intake for a while and you kind of want to see your macros, whether it's, whatever online service, there's several of them out there, and you can kind of see where your protein's coming from. Where's your fiber coming from? Where are these nutrients coming from? It's a great
And
way
I
to
pretty
see.
much stopped tracking because I'm comfortable and kind of gauge what I eat. But every once in a while, I'll just track just to sort of keep myself in check. Yeah, so I'm talking about once a month and just a random day. I could walk around my kitchen at school and consume 1,000 or 2,000 calories without even blinking an eye, just from tasting everything, which is part of my job. And that's honestly, and that's where I gained most of my weight. When I started, I probably gained 100 pounds at school within a year of me starting there, at least 100 pounds, if not more. So, and just blindly shoving food in my mouth, just doing my job. So
Yeah.
eat the cake.
Well, very good. Here's the next one. How is transitioning your kids to so many
Uh,
veggies? That is a great
yeah,
question.
it's a work in progress. But here's the thing that I've learned is, and I'm going to use this verbiage that someone shared with me. It's stay in their lane, and that's so. There's certain vegetables that my kids like. So my youngest son, who's 11, loves carrots. He likes spinach raw. He likes cucumbers. He likes peppers. So there's a few things he likes. So I'll make him a salad, and I'll put all of those in a salad. I use a light dressing that I make myself. That's yogurt based, kind of like a ranch dressing. So I'll make that for him, and he'll have a salad every night. Our go-to vegetable for my kids is carrots because it's something that they eat. And I just boil them, and I put just a tiny bit of butter on it. Sometimes just a splash of soy or a little bit of salt, just to make it taste good. So I'm not going to give them broccoli rabe or escarole or something, eggplant that they don't like. I'm going to stay in their lane and give them what they want. And that's how I transition them into it. I try to sneak it in here or sneak it in there. And it's working. My other two are a little bit older. My oldest is 25, and I have a 23-year-old as well, or soon to be 23. And they're the trickier ones. The 11-year-old eats more veg than either of them. So that's my advice: is stay in their lane. Don't veer off. And fruits. I give lots of fruits. So my son will eat lots of berries and have berries every morning. Every once in a while, he'll have an apple as a snack. So, yep.
No, I think that's even wise, even for us. Pick the veggies that we like best, eat more of those, and then expand
For
from
sure.
there.
Totally.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. I think I've got all the questions. Man, I so appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for
Yeah,
coming
it's my
on.
pleasure to be here.
Any other last minute questions from anyone? I think I've got them all.
Someone had a comment.
But I hope you all were inspired by Paul as much as I was, and make sure you download the handout. We will have a recording of this, and we look forward to seeing what everyone creates from this, like you did.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. And I thank you, Amy. Thank you for having me on and allowing me to share my story. It's fun for me, and if I could reach out and I could help one person, then I've done my job. So, but it's always fun. Like I said, one of my favorite subjects is me. I'm joking.
No, I think you're all that way. No, and I think kind of what you said, as far as it helps you keep on track. We call that you're giving back, and you really are. You're paying it forward. You're giving it back in a way for other people who are still along that same journey as you. So thank you so much for your time.
Just, hey, he did it. I could do it. And just that little bit helps. So I'm glad to help.
Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.